Welcome to the latest episode of our podcast, Driving Eco-Sustainability, My Perspective. And on this day's episode, I have been joined by Mr. John Robert Turyakira, the Deputy ED, Environmental Shield, a climate change activist with over 10 years experience. I am pleased to have him here today. It has been quite a journey and an effort to get him here today. Welcome to our latest episode.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm very glad to be a part of this engagement. It's a great pleasure for me to be given this opportunity to interact with our viewers, especially bringing all of us up to speed, especially on issues, everything environment. Of course, I know that we are supposed to focus so much on the wetlands because I am very sure that all of you, our viewers, issues of the environment and issues of wetlands have actually become very critical. We also recently the evictions in Rubiji, so we must all be concerned. So as she said, my name is Robert Turyakira. I'm the Deputy Executive Director of the Environment Shield. Environment Shield is a civil society organization involved in environmental conservation. We've been doing a lot of work, especially on environmental litigation, but also championing climate justice. And personally, I have been on the front line for a very long time. I am very sure that most of you probably have seen some of the work that we've been doing. But of course, most especially running government entities to come out and play their role, because we see entities like NEMA, like the Ministry of Water and Environment, Parliament of Uganda, they are charged with the responsibility to ensure that we protect our environment. But also all of us as citizens, because our constitution is very clear that all of us as Ugandans, we enjoy a right to a clean and healthy environment under Article 39. But also we also have a duty to protect this right to a clean and healthy environment as citizens under duties of a citizen under Article 17 of our constitution. So it is incumbent upon all of us to try and play our civic role, ensuring that we promote this right, but also ensure that there is sustainable development, because it doesn't pay off for us as a generation to enjoy this environment, enjoy these environmental resources, but at the same time, when we don't compromise, the future generations, because we see that at the core of sustainable development, we must ensure that there's environmental sustainability in the way we enjoy these environmental resources.
All right, thank you so much. And today, as our guest has informed you, we are dealing with and talking about the role of wetlands in achieving environmental sustainability. Now, as someone who has been in this space for a while, briefly, before we delve into the thick of things, what drives your passion within this space? Briefly.
Well, what drives me into the space? Of course, as I said, I feel that as a citizen, I really have a duty to play to ensure that we actually protect this environment that we live in. Because in most cases, when we talk about the environment, many people think that we are talking about something alien, but we're talking about where we all live. I remember in school, we used to say that the environment is everything that surrounds man. But gone are the days. Now, man is part of the environment. So I feel that as a Ugandan, I have a duty to try and make sure that the environment in which I live is actually protected, but also ensuring that my fellow citizens, my fellow, other, organisms, for example, other biodiversity, both macro and micro biodiversity, we must all coexist. Because yes, I know that as human beings, the tendency of us to, parasite on the environment is quite imminent, especially, with capitalism. But I think that, and that is what we have been doing for all this time. Personally, I've been trying to rally colleagues that yes, at least we must step forward and see that we protect some of these fragile ecosystems, for example, the wetlands. I know that, for example, when you look at generally in Uganda, the wetland cover has been going down.
Yes.
When you look at the statistics, the numbers show that in the last 15 years, our wetland cover has declined from 16% to now just 11.5%. And of course, how are wetlands important? As you said in the introduction, the wetlands are very important because they are filters. They help in, filtering our ecosystems. They are ecologically fragile ecosystems, but they are so important that without them, we cannot have, a clean and healthy environment. Just like you see in the body, you have the kidneys. The kidneys help in filtering the internal organs of the body system. But also in the ecosystem, we have the wetlands. For example, in most cases, when it rains, we see there are many floods. We've seen it, for example, here in Kampala. We've seen it in other cities, where, for example, it keeps flooding when it rains. So the wetlands help in getting this water and filter it out and ensure that actually we don't have this flooding. So we as an organization, as Environment Shield and other colleagues out there, environmental rights defenders, we've been trying to work together to see that at least there is sanity, because we see that when there's flooding, it first of all affects the livelihoods of the people, but also we see, for example, the breakup of some of the diseases, because when you see the flooding, there's a lot of health risks and diseases, because when you look at the Ministry of Water and Environment,
yes,
they've been under the Wetland department. They're trying to see how do we ensure that there's sustainability. But the Ministry of Water and Ministry of Health has actually shown that over 60% of the diseases we are getting actually environmental due to poor health and sanitation issues. Therefore, we must ensure that we protect the wetlands because they help in the filtration of some of these floods.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the biggest issues challenging the 21st century, in fact, post 2015, when we started discussing sustainability, we are now dealing with climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. And at the center of this, in your opinion, do you think wetlands are the heartbeat of dealing with all these issues, with the grander picture being that this is the only way we are going to be able to achieve environmental sustainability?
Well, it is true that we are dealing with a very, very serious problem, especially the triple planetary crisis that you've talked about, talking about climate change, pollution, and biodiversity loss. And of course, international statements have actually come out. When you read the latest report from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, that actually composed of climate scientists, they've actually shown that actually we are at a point of no return. We are actually where we are headed for, because of the challenges that we are facing as humanity, especially with climate change. We are actually having a very big problem that is affecting largely the level of biodiversity loss, but also the level at which we are encroaching on these fragile ecosystems.
Yes.
The water cycles globally have actually been disrupted, because that's why you see we are having different weather patterns. One thing that I also did not emphasize is that the wetlands contribute to the formation of the water cycle.
Yes.
The reason why is that many people in the local communities actually they are facing some of these effects of climate change, because the weather patterns have changed. Even our farmers, for example, they used to, for example, find areas that used to receive amount of rainfall in a given time. Now it has actually changed. So it is true that globally we are facing the triple planetary crisis, and as I said, the wetlands are actually a stabilizing factor, because if they contribute to the water cycle, the formation of rainfall, it is one way how they can actually reverse the issue of climate change. But also, wetlands are carbon sinks, because when you talk about the carbon sequestration in the atmosphere, we find that the biggest change we have right now is the issue of greenhouse gas emissions.
Yes.
And because of industrialization, especially in countries like in the global north, when you look at, for example, China and the USA, they contribute about 55% of the greenhouse gas emissions. So you realize that because of the loss, the biodiversity loss due to the encroachment of the wetlands, it has affected how the earth is able to absorb these greenhouse gas emissions. And because of that, we have had a big problem of global warming. Because when these greenhouse gas emissions, for example, talk about carbon dioxide, methane, sulfur dioxide, and other greenhouse gases like the chlorofluorocarbons, they form a blanket around the layer of the Earth's surface, and you find that now the heat that is supposed to escape into the atmosphere, it remains on Earth, and you find that we get these heat waves. You saw that recently, for example, when we had the heat wave, like in the Sudan, it was all the way up to 64 degrees Celsius. And in Uganda, it even came down to about the temperatures in Kampala was an average of about 36 degrees.
Yes.
So even globally, you've been seeing wildfires, for example, in California and other places. So the issue of global warming is very, very serious, and it is as a result of the encroachment of our wetland cover globally. And of course, as a global community, we have committed ourselves that we are going to ensure that we maintain our global temperatures to pre-industrial temperatures to 1.5 degrees Celsius. And by us doing that, it means that every country must play its part. Although the global north is responsible for these greenhouse gas emissions due to industrialization, we in the global south, countries, for example, here in Uganda and the rest of Southern Africa, we must also play our part. And indeed, as Uganda, we have made our commitments under the National Determined Contribution that we're going to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 to a tune of 24.7%. So you see that for us to do that, we must be very robust in ensuring that we do ecological restoration. And that is why at the global level, we have launched a decade of ecological restoration from 2020 to 2030 to ensure that we restore all these wetlands that have been degraded. When you look at, for example, in Uganda, I've been talking about Rubiji wetland. You've been seeing NEMA coming out, with full force to ensure they restore those ecosystems. But other wetlands, for example, like wetland like Bigodi in Fort Portal, for example, like in northern Uganda, in Pariside, is a wetland called the Limoto wetland. There has been a lot of effort on the part of government to try and restore these wetlands. And of course, we as activists, as people who are on the front line, civil society, all of us as citizens, we must work together to support the effort of government to see that we restore these wetlands because they are good for all of us.
Yes, wow, that's a lot of information. But while we are at that point, yes, wetlands are carbon sinks. They contribute to rainfall. But while all this information is out there, we still struggle with the fact that people are still using wetlands for their own private use. They are not noticing that we have to preserve our wetlands for future generations. So out there, a layman is wondering, what are those activities that I should stop doing within a wetland? So that I can ensure that even future generations, even my grandchildren can as well benefit from this ecosystem. Yes, so what are those land use changes that are really, really doing badly in terms of distracting our wetlands and causing all the floods? Because we have to recognize that within Kampala here, now one of the leading problems we face and we are worried about every single day is that when we have rains, we have flash floods. Kids are going back home. They are literally walking through rainwater. And this comes with also, of course, other problems like waterborne diseases. So what are those land use changes that our watchers and listeners out there have to know that if you do this, you are contributing to wetland destruction?
Well, first of all, one thing that I would like our viewer to really appreciate, as I said earlier on, is that yes, while government is a primary duty bearer to protect the wetlands, but also we as individuals, as citizens, we also have a leading role. We have a role to play to ensure that we actually protect these wetlands. And I can tell you that, as I told you, how the wetland cover has been declining over the years. One of the biggest challenges that we've been having is that, number one, as I said, the local communities encroaching on the wetlands, of course, illegally, because you see that in some of these local communities, people have been settling in some of these wetlands. Maybe they are growing rice, maybe they are growing yams. They're doing some what you can call micro activities. But when these activities continue over a long period of time, they have a far-reaching effect on the wetland ecosystem. But the biggest change we are having, which is the elephant in the room, that we have been, some of us speaking out, is about the government, where we find that the government has been allowing, through NEMA, because the law, the National Environment Act, allows NEMA to, for example, issue a certificate, a wetland permit to a developer who actually convinces them and persuades them that actually the project they are going to do will not actually affect the ecosystem. So we've been having that big challenge where, for example, they are setting up, because when you look at, for example, like most of the industrial parks in Uganda, like in Uganda, like in Kampala, when you look up maybe like Namave or other areas, you find that most of the industries have been set up in the wetlands. We've been involved in the struggle, for example, the issue of Ruera, where there is actually, those who may not know, Ruera wetland is one of the largest wetlands in the whole of Africa, between Masaka and where there was the collapse of Katonga Bridge. There has been a lot of issues, sand mining, large-scale rice growing. So the issue of the government allowing the investors and the business owners to set up in the wetland has been a big problem. And some of us as environmental defenders, we've been raising some of these issues to government. And I'm happy that government seems to actually be listening now, because when you see what NEMA is doing to try and at least come out. In fact, in 2021, government issued a directive that there shall be no more issuance of wetland permits to any industry or any other company that is going to set up in the wetland. So we think that that's a good step. So I think that the activities, because you see the law, the National Environment Act, allows some activities, if they are really very, minimal activities. For example, as I said, like commercial fish farming, the law, the National Environment Act promotes what we call sustainable use of the wetlands.
Yes.
So I think that at the community level, and that's why you see that every district has what we call the District Environment and Natural Resource Officer. They are supposed to be able to sensitize the people that, what they're supposed to do is cut out some activities that are actually only allowed in the law to ensure that they don't affect the ecosystem of the wetland. Because as I said earlier on, when these wetland ecosystems are actually affected, what happens is desertification.
Yes.
Because once the water cycle is affected and there's increase in the greenhouse gas emissions, then we are going to have desertification here. And of course, desertification affects, increases the biodiversity loss. But also the other problem we get is that we are going to have food insecurity, hunger, because we are able to live because we are able to actually have this rainfall and the soil fertility that is supposed to be able to sustain human life through food security and be able to grow our crops. So the activities that the people carry out in the wetlands, they should only be allowed in the law. As I said, for example, commercial fish farming, which actually do not affect the ecosystem of the wetland. But things like large-scale mining, things like industrialization, those affect the ecosystem of the wetland. And actually, that's why we've been seeing some wetlands even disappearing. When you look at the wetland atlas that the ministry has put out at the NEMA, it shows that some of the wetlands that actually used to exist, they have disappeared. And it's a big problem. It's really a big problem.
Yes, so now at that point, we are at a point where we are at crossroads. We are wondering, should we permit development in wetlands? And also, because now government is looking at enhancing service delivery to its people. So, and then also people need to continue farming in these places. So 2 questions. 1, how do we balance the population needs to continue using these wetlands optimally, and also the need to preserve them for future generations to ensure that they exist in perpetuity? Then secondly, just someone asks you, do you think people should be getting development permission in wetlands? Because people given development permission seems like it's a way of ensuring that we attract investment into the economy. Do you think to what extent and what parameters should be in place when granting this development permission? And also, how can we balance the population needs to continue utilizing these wetlands and also the need to preserve them sustainably for future generations?
Now, I'll start with the second question, why you asked about whether they should permit developments in the wetland. Personally, I come from a mindset that what the best way we can do is to ensure sustainable use of these environmental resources.
Yes,
that's what I really believe, because I know that as someone who has been on the front line for a long time, that you cannot protect the environment unless you empower the people. And empowering the people, it means that you must ensure that the people actually have a source of livelihood, but also the economy must grow, because poor people will always find a way how to survive. And that's why you see we're having all these illegal encroachments. So for me, I think that the government must be proactive. How do we try to balance this? And it goes to the first question you asked. How do we balance population pressure vis-a-vis the protection of the wetland? For me, I think that what government is doing is actually the right thing. Of course, for example, with the current clampdown by NEMA is actually a good thing, but only that has actually come late, because you see that the people are going to be evicted out of the wetland. Some of them actually showing that they've been in the places for a long time. And that has also, caused a lot of uproar, because if someone has been in the place for about 20, 30, 50 years and they are showing even evidence of ownership, it actually raises even how people even acquire some of these places. And that's why since some people are even asking that all this time where has been NEMA. So for me, I think that as a person that believes in sustainable development, I think we need to do one thing. Number one, large-scale awareness and sensitization of the population. Because I believe that if the people are aware why we need to protect these wetlands, why these ecosystems are very important, why we need to coexist in a symbiotic way with nature, then the people themselves, they actually be in the front line. Because when you look at, for example, other countries, for example, like Rwanda and other places where there have been a lot of progress in protecting environmental resources and ensuring that we keep a clean and healthy environment. The people are always involved. The people are, pushing them out and using force alone is not enough, because at the end of the day, people will still keep pushing back if they are not aware of this. And also we must promote, environmentally sensitive activities, for example, like ecotourism.
Yes.
Because I know, for example, like as I talked about the wetland like Bigodi, where, for example, people are, promoting a lot of ecotourism around the wetland. So I am very sure that once people believe that, they are stakeholders in this kind of environmental protection and restoration, they will actually be on the front line to ensure that actually protect other than destroy. Because I can tell you something. Me, I have interacted with many common people. They are willing to protect the environment. But you see, I think there must be deliberate effort by government, and of course even ourselves in the civil society, to try and work with the people, the ordinary people. Because yes, even when you see, for example, like I told you about the Lemoto wetland in Padisa. I was there last year and I was trying to see what are people doing to ensure that this wetland is protected. The common people actually involved. They are the ones who are doing on the front line. Even when they were trying to do that ecological restoration, most of them were involved. So I think at the center of this is to ensure that we involve the people, and that's why personally I'm so inspired and encouraged by the many voices that have been coming out, especially from civil society, but also our young people who have been coming out, speaking out in loud voices, amplifying some of these voices in millions, to try and see that, the issues of climate change that actually we are facing right now, we really must have a halt to the destruction of our ecosystems and our wetlands that we've been doing. So I think that NEMA needs to get out of its comfort zone and think that they just wake up and break down people's houses. They need to work with all of us, the activists, work with the local government, work with the local leaders, religious leaders, and leaders in the cultural institutions. I can tell you something. You remember one time when the Kabaka here encouraged the people to go into environmental protection.
Yes.
Many people really got involved. So people will want to listen more from people they trust, like religious leaders or cultural leaders, or their local leaders, other than from a certain person from NEMA, or even someone who's not part of them. So I think we must be deliberate in ensuring that we rally the ordinary people through massive sensitization to see that we actually protect some of these environmental resources.
Yes, now we are at a point, this discussion has shifted. Years ago, we could even say decades ago, we could be thinking about protecting, conserving what we have. But we seem to be at a position where now we are going to be focusing on restoration, mainly. We are restoring what we've lost. So do you think, because I've seen out there people are trying to say, yes, people have been evicted, they've been on this land for years. Someone says they've been there for over 50 years, generations and generations over. That's Lubiji wetland. Do you think the human rights-based approach would be the best way to do it? Like, let us not just go there and evict people, because also NEMA has come out to say that actually we didn't just wake up to evict people. We have been giving notices. We have engaged these people. They have been aware that this is coming, but they seem to have sat on their laurels and waited up to this point. So how do you think, how should we balance the fact that we need to respect the rights of these people who are already occupying this land, and also the need to restore our environment? Because now we are at a stage where it's an emergency. We can't wait anymore. We can't continue shifting it. It's now or never.
Yeah.
Yes.
I agree with you on the first part, especially where we have to restore. As I told you that globally, we launched a decade of ecological restoration from 2020 up to 2030, and we believe that in the next 10 years, there has been a lot of impact on our ecosystems. And we have seen a massive, biodiversity loss and the loss of these very, very important ecosystems. So the point where we are is at a point of restoration. And indeed, on the World Environment Day, we had the theme of land restoration and ecosystem resilience, especially in the wake of climate change. So the way to go is the only way how we are going to reverse the current loss of wetland cover is by us deliberately focusing on restoration. But of course also the other point you raised, the human rights based approach is what is supposed to be followed, because I mean, I had the opportunity at the time when there was a lot of clampdown in Rubiji. I had an opportunity to meet with the NEMA leadership, the executive director, Dr. Kankwasa. And one of the issues that I was trying to really bring to light to him was the fact that, you actually can do some good work, but it gets lost when actually the effect is actually what we are seeing right now. Because it's so, as you've raised, when people's houses are broken down. There was one of the photos that we saw of a mother who was holding a chicken in her hands, an old woman. So, protecting the environment should not be a precursor where actually people's rights actually violated, because as I told you, Article 39 of our Constitution says that every Ugandan has a right to a clean and healthy environment. So it means that for us to enjoy this right, it must be enjoyed in tandem, in light with other rights. For example, housing rights, for example, land rights, for example, all these other rights. So I think a human rights-based approach would actually go a long way to actually provide the sustainable solution. But then also, we must answer the question of how. You have said, for example, and indeed NEMA has also said that they've been giving notices. Personally, I've looked at some of the notices they are referring to, but I can tell you something. If you issue a notice and it's not widely publicized, it is not disseminated widely, so many people may not actually know about most of these notices. I can tell you something, majority of Ugandans, either they listen to radios, either they rely on word of mouth to actually get the information. So if you just maybe probably run in a newspaper, a notice or something, or even you put on your Twitter space, they may not be able to understand some of this.
No one can take 1,700 to buy a newspaper.
Absolutely. Because you're dealing with a largely poor population, vulnerable communities. So for me, I think that, and that's why I was actually running government, that we must take advantage of the presence of civil society in the communities, the community-based organizations, the local governments. Because why would you, for example, go to evict, let's say, people from a wetland and you don't engage the local leadership? I think the people who actually are there, yes, I know sometimes there's a bit of politics that sometimes happens, but I think what needs to be done is to ensure that we do, as I said, large-scale, mobilization, sensitization, and awareness creation, especially ensuring that we bridge the information gap. Because I can tell you, even at my level, NEMA can put out a communication and you miss it. I personally have been actually pushing to access, for example, the wetland, atlas to see, because the law says that if a wetland is not gazetted, then it's not a wetland. You must ensure that it is gazetted. So showing a place that it looks like a wetland alone is not enough. You must ensure that it's, but how many Ugandans can access the wetland gazette? Very few. So I think we must be deliberate in ensuring that we disseminate this information as widely as possible. And that's why I'm happy that, for example, your initiative is trying to really bridge the information gap, especially, informing as many viewers out there as possible, especially our young people who are on the front line, speaking out about some of these issues, but also entering into the spaces where, many people are. For example, the digital spaces like Twitter, WhatsApp, and TikTok, where many young people are involved. So at the end of the day, we have a broad-based conversation on how we can actually sustainably be able to restore some of these ecosystems. And it is incumbent upon all of us to actually do the hard work, because when the conservation and restoring of wetland is not good only for NEMA, but it's good for all of us, for that average farmer in the community, for a livestock farmer, for a commercial fish farmer, for everybody. I can tell you something, 67% of our people are still stuck in subsistence agriculture. So it means that now once you actually have these ecosystems endangered, because you have agriculture over 80% nature dependent, it means that now an encroachment on the wetland, it has a trickle-down effect on all the other sectors of the economy, of the infrastructure, but also, as we talked about, like, for example, kids going to school, it affects education, and it also has a far-reaching effect on the right to housing.
Yes, I think what I've picked out is that we really, really, really need to focus on community participation, community collaboration. Communities have to be involved. There is no other way into it. But we also have to ensure that they are made aware. Now, I've been seeing, things making rounds about the fact that now NEMA gazetted, as you've mentioned, when a place is not gazetted, then it's not a wetland. Now, we've been seeing that NEMA recently issued a notice of wetlands, gazetted wetlands across the entire country.
Yes.
Areas that are recognized as wetlands. So now at this point, someone has a piece of land. In fact, people out there are now worried that they bought pieces of land, but now they may be gazetted as wetlands and they are not aware, perhaps, and they are wondering, now what am I going to do? What's next? Like, there is panic out there. So in your view, do you think we can do better in disseminating this information? And we can improve in access and breaking down this information, because when you look at the gazetted wetlands, it's now a very bulky document when you look at it. And it was a recently issued notice of 2023. But how do you think we can best bridge this information gap?
In fact, actually, the Gazette, I think the notice came out around December 2023, and it has probably run for the last 6 months. And I agree with you. There's a lot of panic. Two issues that I see that is very, very important. Number one, already, as you said, it is possible that someone could have actually bought their land, rightfully, have their probably even their titles or even their agreement, but when they actually bought in a wetland unknowingly. But also, I have seen NEMA is trying to put out a campaign to try and rally citizens that even in case they think that their land actually has is a wetland, they should be able to follow the due process to verify that. But of course, between me and you, it's quite challenging. If, for example, as a citizen, if the citizen discovers that their land is actually a wetland, is gazetted as a wetland, then what will happen? So all those issues are quite sticky. But also the as I talked about, the utterance.
Yes.
The utterance needs to be disseminated as widely as possible. And that's why I say I really think people like you who are really coming up with with this kind of idea to try and maybe even bridge the gap where maybe some media houses may not be taking interest, because for a long time we've been having a challenge that environmental and climate change issues are not given mainstream media attention, because Uganda is always so much of politics, and there's a lot of sensationalization. People want to focus on other things other than focusing on environmental issues. Yes. But at least right now we all know, and now we can witness, that environmental issues are no longer peripheral issues, they are mainstream issues. Therefore, we need to ensure that, and I want to rally all the media houses out there to pick interest and help the Omuntu Wawans, the ordinary citizen, to actually be able to understand that probably where is this wetland located? What is entailed in this Gazette notice? I would want to see the newspapers running widely this utterance, that every Ugandan knows where a wetland is located. Because otherwise, as you said, the law is very, very clear that if a place is not gazetted as a wetland, that place is not a wetland. But also, suppose the place is located as gazetted as a wetland, but at the same time, when it actually belongs to somebody. Yes. I have even seen a notice of the titles that have been cancelled. I saw a notice from NEMA just the other day that was issued out. Many plots of land have been cancelled. Their titles have been cancelled as wetlands. So we must have this as a national conversation. I would want to see a parliament. I know that our parliament tends to really pay attention to non-peripheral issues, but issues of environment. We have an Environment and Natural Resource Committee headed by the Honorable Emmanuel Otara. We have the Climate Change Committee headed by the Honorable Songa Lawrence. We want to see that the issues of the citizens actually come out, especially in these committees, but also in the plenary, to ensure that the grievances of the people actually are answered through ensuring that this information is disseminated directly to the ordinary person, but also use the structures, the national structures, for example, the National Youth Council, the local government, to try and ensure that our people understand this information. And if there were errors that were made, then we also find an amicable way of solving them, because we have a problem, as I said, probably NEMA is being seen as maybe as a policeman or what, but I want to see NEMA engaging many people through conversations, engage with us as members of civil society, engage members of private sector. So at the end of the day, it's a conversation that creates a win-win situation. So at the end of the day, we can say that going forward, we can be able to protect these wetlands that we are mining and restore some that we can restore.
All right. Now, at that point, now that we need dissemination, information sharing, roundtable discussions are the way to go. Now, in your view, we are dealing with the issues of wetland destruction. Do you spell hope or doom for the future? Do you think wetland destruction is going to worsen, or now we are going to see a systematic reduction in wetland encroachment and destruction, in your view?
As I gave you the statistics there, in the last 15 years, we've had a very, very sharp decline on the wetland cover.
Yes.
And at 11.5% is really, really so damning. And even the wetlands that are even available right now that we see that are still available, they are really all under threat.
Yes.
I'm not a dooms person. I would really want to
Which
believe,
is a good thing.
I would want to believe that the recent efforts,
yes,
and thanks to NEMA and all the active citizens out there,
yes,
especially environmental rights defenders, I want to believe that we are headed in the right direction. But of course, the other challenge that also that many viewers have been interrogating is that while we see that government actually banned the giving out of wetland permits, but we see many, because you see, an ordinary Ugandan will not understand if you actually come and break their house, but at the same time they see a business going on in the wetland. They will not understand that they have been actually interpreting as selective, application of the law and double standards. So I think the government needs to come out clean and be able to ensure that we really, explain to the people. But also government must be deliberate. Because restoration, let me show you something. It is very expensive to restore a destroyed ecosystem than even conserving it.
Yes.
It's much, much more.
I think prevention is better than cure.
Absolutely. So we must be deliberate as a country. I think if there is anything that should unite us as a country, irrespective of our differences, irrespective of our intergenerational difference. I know nowadays there's a lot of Gen Z talk and the millennials, but now we must all know that environment and climate change issues affect all of us disproportionately. And therefore, we must focus. How do we have this as a national consensus?
Yes.
Because I have had trouble with some of the political players, especially political parties, where you find that they don't mainstream some of these issues, especially during the election season. Few or even none of them even pay attention to the mainstream issues of environment and climate change. And even those who attempt to do so, they just want to politicize them on partisan lines. Yet these are issues that are affecting every person. And the most unfortunate thing is that environment and climate change issues affect the most vulnerable of our communities, and they affect the poor, the people with disabilities, the children, the women. The most vulnerable of our society. So it means that we must be deliberate, either by realigning, for example, our national funding. Because look, the Office of the Prime Minister passed a disaster risk management plan. Yes.
With an intention
that actually we shall be able to see people who are affected by some of these, for example, climate-related disasters, maybe floods, maybe landslides and others. They will actually be supported, and we ensure that we build resilience and disaster risk reduction through preparedness. We prepare. But what we see is that government usually just waits for a disaster to hit and they just go running to respond. You can't respond to what you've not prepared for. And that is why some of us have been making noise. For example, you look at the National Constitution and at Article 249, it says that there shall be a disaster commission which should be established to ensure that it prepares the country about issues of disaster. Uganda is a disaster hotspot.
Yes.
Almost everywhere you go now, we saw the other one in Mbari where the floods were sweeping down.
Yes.
Just here the other day when trained on Entebbe Road, the whole place, and we've been seeing the rising of the Lake Victoria waters. So it's a big challenge, and therefore I would really want to see, whether it is in our TikTok spaces, whether it is on Twitter, whether it is on all the radios and all the other media houses, to have this conversation cascaded down to the ordinary citizen, to ensure that all of us fold our sleeves and be able to ensure that we create a clean and healthy environment which all of us can actually enjoy.
All right, so now an ordinary citizen listening, watching you out there, has walked up to you and they have listened, they've watched us for the last or so minutes, and they ask you, just in one statement, what would you describe as the ideal situation of us utilizing our wetlands while also achieving environmental sustainability?
Utilizing our wetland entails you carrying out an activity that does not affect the ecosystem of the wetland. As I've said, wetlands are ecologically fragile ecosystems. You must ensure that whichever activity you're going to do in the wetland, first of all, it should be allowed in the law, the National Environment Act.
Yes.
But also ensure that you as a person, you make yourself as a NEMA, the National Environment, you become the watchdog of that wetland.
Yes.
Be concerned when you go to an area like Teso sub-region. There's a lot of wetland encroachment. So you must ensure that you And the president the other day was saying that you don't have to wait for NEMA. So all of us must become the NEMA of our communities and ensure that we become the watchdogs of these wetlands. But also, as I've said, if you are doing carry out an activity, if it is rice growing, if it is the growing of yams, if it's about, there should be these small activities that are actually allowed in the law to ensure that we don't endanger our ecosystem. Just know one thing, that if you damage that wetland, you're actually damaging yourself, you are damaging an entire generation, and you're also damaging the generations to come. And this war against nature, the parasitic approach that we are using towards nature, is not sustainable. Nature will always fight back, and that's why we are seeing all this flooding. And I can tell you, we cannot win this war against nature. Time for us to rethink and actually ensure that is ecological restoration, is ecological conservation, and ensuring that we have sustainable development.
All right. Now, I think for me, what I've picked is that we have to be each other's keeper. Absolutely. We have to be each other's neighbor. Like, learn that when you're doing something, if you're throwing that polythene bag, if you're deciding to go and set up your farm next to a wetland, that you're not only affecting yourself, but it's a bigger picture out there. You have to understand that you're part of a grander community.
Yes.
And that if you're preserving the wetland, you're doing it for not only your good, but you're doing it for the good of your community. Which of course fits in well with our underlying principle as Africans of we want to be out there to protect yourself, but also know that you're doing it for the good of all.
Absolutely.
So now, Robert, you've been in this space for so many years. You've been around, and you're passionate about the space. So someone out there really wants to join this space. What would be that one inspirational message you would have to share with them that would say, I want to do more for my community, because community intervention is needed and we can all contribute to bettering.
Yeah.
So what would be that one inspirational statement you would tell someone and they would say, yes, I think now I can get into this space. I also have a role to play in preserving nature.
Well, it's a difficult one. I must really say that for all those that are watching us, especially, our young people, because personally I've been so much involved with young people, bring out their, and I'm always inspired by how, passionate they are about, especially the need for us to protect nature and conserve our environment. Because to them, the destruction of our planet is personal. They've stepped forward, many of them really speaking out. So the inspiration that I would really want to give them, and I want to tell them that your actions matter. If you really thought that your actions don't matter, then look at me as probably as an inspiration, because I have been in the space for some time now on the front line to try to take actions. We've been involved in all these legal battles, especially using the law in a public interest to try and ensure that environmental rights actually upheld in this country. Going to the courts of law, going to the communities to mobilize communities, sensitizing. So a time reaches in life, even one voice is enough. So if you really cannot do something, at least speak out.
Yes.
Raise your voice. I know one time Barack Obama told the young people that they should remain angry. And you don't know what it means by you speaking out. Yes, the older generation may not care so much because probably they think that they will not be affected by these environmental and climate-related disasters. But I can tell you that they will actually listen to what you are saying. So speak out, use your space. Talk to your neighbor. What you do at the individual level also matters. So I think that time has come for all of us to actually look at that part of the natural world, the biodiversity, the wetland, the forest, all the things that are in the environment. They concern all of us. So do something, do what you can where you are, and use what you have to be able to speak out. Use your voice matter, and ensure that you use your spaces to inspire as many other people, as many other young people to actually come out and protect this planet that we all call home.
All right, thank you so much. It has been great having you here today. And for all those who are interested in watching, please watch out on our YouTube channel and all the listening platforms. And for those who are interested in knowing more about Robert's work, he's very active on social media, that is Twitter. Yeah. He can share his Twitter handles with you. And also, if you're comfortable, you can share with our viewers and listeners any other work, any other projects that you're part of that they would be interested in. I know that you have the Green Foundation, that is an umbrella organization that welcomes all people who are interested in contributing to environmental sustainability.
Yes. Thank you so much. Once again, I'm really very privileged to really come to this engagement and sharing with our viewers. It's really quite it's been great interacting with all of you. Yes, it is true that we have different initiatives, especially tailored around how we can take action, because yes, we can talk, but action matter.
Yes.
And that's why, as I said, many young people are getting involved in issues of green innovations, green entrepreneurship, and creating green jobs to try and see that we actually take on those projects that are sustainable and actually ensuring that they absorb the greenhouse gases from the atmosphere. So for me, those actions are the ones that I really look at. And of course, the Green Foundation is a platform that brings together all these voices from civil society to private sector to stakeholders, especially primary duty bearers. We've been engaging and we continue to engage to ensure that we all have a common citizen voice and ensuring that actually some of these issues are mainstreamed. Of course, about my handle, my handle is at Robert Turyakira under the Green Foundation, but also I could also give out my number in case you really would want to engage. I'll give you the WhatsApp number. It is a 0783 00 1913. 0783 00 1913. As I said, at the end of the day, our collective action matters. They say that if you want to reach very fast, you move alone. But if you want to reach very far, you move with others.
Yes.
So I want to rally all environmental rights defenders out there, the climate activists, all government ministries, departments and agencies, our parliament, our judiciary, His Excellency the President, and all the leaders in your respective capacity, that this is the only planet that we have, and therefore we must all of us work together to ensure that we conserve it. And we have to do that through ecological restoration, through conservation, and ensuring that we observe sustainable practices that ensure sustainable development. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, once more, it has been a great honor having you here. To all our watchers, viewers, listeners, you can subscribe, you can rate this episode. It's going to be available online, and it's going to be available to all the listening platforms out there. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.